Hey Saber Fans, this is Adam from Blue Force Sabers. Welcome back. So I wanted to do a software tutorial for the Teensysaber 3.2. I found that most people have questions on the software side, actually more than the hardware side. So a good place to go for that is for the forums. Obviously also to Frederick's website, which we're going to fire up here in a second, and it'll give you all the information on there. But I figured I'd do a tutorial. Since I've been messing around with it, I just completed 2 of my installs, so I think I'm pretty good on how it's all put together now. And a couple of little tips and tricks that I didn't know about that I found just by messing with the software and creating my config files and everything. So hopefully this tutorial will help you out and get you started and down the right path and get you up and running. So the first thing we need to do is go to Frederick's page so we can download a couple pieces of software. So if you just open up Google or Chrome or whatever browser you use, just type in Teensysaber and it'll pop right up. First link is pretty much going to be this page right here. So this is the Teensysaber Electronics V3. As you can see, the board there. And then, so I would recommend going through all the links on the website. Just kind of get a general idea and feel of everything if you haven't looked at any of this yet. Kind of assuming that you have. If you've already researched the soundboard itself, I'm sure you probably already came to this page. So I would just take a look over this because there's obviously a lot of information on here which you would need for doing the installation. As you can see, obviously an important part of information here. And you can really gather a lot of information from this site without even going onto the forums or the Facebook page or anything like that. You can see I like to print these out, and then as I'm doing my installations too, you have all this info in front of you when you're doing all your soldering joints. So we can take a look at the layout here of how you're going to be setting up and wiring your Teensysaber to your NeoPixel blades. This is probably going to be the most common setup, using a NeoPixel blade with a 3.7 volt battery, 2 momentary switches, a speaker, recharge port, and the board itself. So we're going to use this as pretty much the standard of how we're going to be doing the config file, because you can change these with touch buttons, and it's going to change out the coding and everything too. You can use it with the stars, but we're going to stick with the NeoPixel and 2 momentary buttons. So I'm going to give you a quick look at this, and we'll go back to that in a second. So let's go and download the software that we're going to need. So as you can see here, it says the Teensysaber software. So we're going to go in there. If you don't have Arduino already installed, that is this link right here. So you're going to scroll down here. I'm on a Windows PC, so this is the one I'm going to be installing. And then you can just click just download, and then you'll get that download and the installation. I already have that installed, so I'm not going to do that. Pretty straightforward in how to install the application now. So once you install the application, we're going to go back to the page. So we need this is the software that Frederick has written, and this is what is going to be actually running the Saber itself. So we're going to have to download this. This is the most current version. I also have this downloaded already, so it's going to come to a zip folder. So I would recommend extracting the zip folder to your desktop. So that's the easiest way to get to the information. And I have that on my desktop already. So that's just as simple as downloading that and extracting it to your desktop. The other thing you're going to need is, to get you started, some sound fonts and tracks. So you can download that, and as you can see, it would take a little bit actually already have that downloaded, so I'm going to cancel that. And that's pretty much all you need for the software side. So we're going to scroll down here and see preparations for Teensysaber. So we already have the software installed. We have the Teensy software. And then so what you need to do is make this change here, and that's in the Arduino software. So we would open that up. And the only thing you need to change here is you go to Tools, Board, and then make sure you have Teensy 3.2, 3.1 selected. So we can close that out. So when we extracted our folders, pull these down here a little bit, it's going to extract to Lightsaber. So I have this changed. I like to put the version. I like to change the name of the folder to whatever the current version is, just so I know what one I'm working with, you know, in case I don't touch it for a little while. And there is updates that come out consistently with the software, so it's always nice to have that on there. So this is the most current one. So you can change that to whatever you want. That's just what I named it. But the most important part is that this folder here has to be Lightsaber. It's the way the .ino file goes to the information. It has to be in that Lightsaber folder. So once we click in there, you have all this. Pretty much the only thing you're going to touch is the config folder and the INO application here. So let's go back into, actually before we leave, you have the sound folders too. So I downloaded the sound fonts from the page, this one here. You extract those to your desktop. Now you can name that whatever you want, doesn't matter, because this is going to be the information you're going to copy to your SD card. So this is my setup right now. The sound folders are going to just be in different folders in here, just different names, but it is the general same exact layout. It's just going to be different names on the folders. So for example here, this is one of the KSYS sound fonts, Balance. So if you click in there, you have all your Blaster, your Boot, your Clash, Font, Force, everything in there. And then it's going to be the same for all of these. So the most important thing when you're setting up the software is to name whatever your sound font you're going to be using, whatever you want, whatever unique name you want to change it to. It just has to be within 8 characters. So what that means is that it has to be 8 characters in the name. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 7, so it's okay. It just can't be over 8 characters. It's just the way the software has to be to read the folders. So like I said, you can add as many sound folders in here as you like. You can name it to what you want. So you can pull Plector Labs sound files and put them on here. NEC, Smooth Swing fonts, and you can name it whatever you want. So that is that folder right there. So how do we work on the config, a new config file and setup? So what we need to go is back to the page here. As I was saying earlier, let's go back to the main page. So into the configurator, So we have our setup here. So below that, it generates the config file code. So this is the general code that we need to get started. So we're just going to highlight this, right click, copy. So all you need to do is open a new text file. So you can actually just use any one of these that are in here. It doesn't matter which one. A new notepad. If you just hit file, new, and then now we have a new blank notepad. So we're going to right click, paste, and so here's all the code from that page. So all this code here is now into our new config notepad document here. So a couple of things you need to look at here. There's not too much you're going to change up here, starting at the top part here. So the volume, if you're using a 2-watt speaker, I would not put this above 1300, and it's as easy as just clicking where you want and changing it. Another question I see is this max LEDs per strip. You don't want to change that, you just leave that alone. Also with the volume, I use a 3-watt speaker, and the reason why a 3-watt is better is just because it runs off a 3-watt amp. So you can run that a little bit higher. I usually put mine at 1600. So a 2-watt, I would not go above 13. Actually 12 is probably more reasonable. And then once you fire it up, you can actually see how loud it will be. 1600 is actually pretty loud for the 3-watt that I use. So that's good for me. Another question is, and you're going to want to change this, you have to figure out how many pixels you're going to have in one strip. So most people use 2 strips in their Saber blades. I use 2, but this is per strip. So that is a full 1 meter strip, 144. I like to use 126 in mine. So you're going to change that. Everything else you can leave the same. So the other most important part in here is the presets. So this whole right thing that I'm highlighting here, this whole thing, is one entire preset. So starting here, and all this code here, brackets and everything, are important to keep in there. As you can see in each individual one, they have all these brackets. These are other common questions that I see when people can't get these to work, and that's because of, you might be missing a bracket here, or these closed brackets here as well. You'll see when you get into the style editor that a lot of these times this gets left out, and then it just doesn't work when you send it into the Arduino program. So as I was talking about earlier with the sound files, pull that up here, shrink this down just so you can see it. So this is the name of one of the sound folders. So that is what this is referring to right here. If you downloaded the sound files from the website and you extracted them, this would be one of the folders in there, Teensysaber, that has all the boot sounds, font sounds, clash, and everything in there. So if I wanted to use this on mine, I wanted to have this first preset play the balance sound file. I would change this simply to balance, and it has to be exactly the same. The tracks is referring to the background music that you can play. So that is this folder right here, tracks. So say I wanted to switch the first one to Cantina. Go in here, cantina.wave. So it would play the balance sound files, and if I wanted to, the Cantina wave file. This right here is going to define your blade style. So color, the flicker effect, on and off, a whole bunch of things in here. You can also put the name of what it is, green blade, white blade, something to that extent. As you can see here, blue, green, white. So you can know kind of what your blade style is when you're looking at your config file here. So that is pretty much it with how it's laid out. Like I said, this is all one file here, or all one preset. So you can change these to whatever ones you want. You want to leave it. This is a great startup, just so you can kind of see how it all is when you first fire up your blade or your saber. But you're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to change it to all the stuff that you want. So let me show you an example of one of mine. Close this out. So this would be in the lightsaber folder. This folder right here I have on my desktop. Go into the config. So when you would save the config file that we were just messing around with, you would save it and put it in this config folder. Now you can name it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. So I have this Sauron, Sub-Zero, Superman. Doesn't matter what you name it. So it can be completely unique, like these are here. So for example, this one is Sauron. So I have my volume set at 1600. Pixels 126. And now I have all of my soundtrack, my Lord of the Rings soundtrack, one of the styles, and these are all different ones. So Kylo, Vader, the soundtrack, it plays in the end, and now you can do as many as you want on here. I would recommend not getting too crazy and doing 30 or 40. It's a lot to go through once you have your saber. Once you're messing around with it, probably around 15 is probably a good mix of color and sounds and stuff that you can switch to, but obviously that's up to you. That's just my preference. So all these are different blade styles that you can put in here, and I'll show you where you can start to really play around with those and figure out what you want to put in here. So say we're good with our file and we don't want to do anything more with it. You're going to go back to the lightsaber folder, and then we're going to click on the lightsaber.ino. It's going to open up Arduino. Alright. So you're going to see all of this right here. Let me bring this one out. So I believe this one, the very first one here, this is the only part you're going to be changing in this whole entire file here. So it's going to look like this, minus all my custom stuff. So you're going to see here up top where it's highlighted. It's a different color than all these other ones. So if I started to upload this to my Teensy or I wanted to prepare it to upload it to my Teensy, it would go after this config file right here. This is pulling from our config folder right here. That's why it's important to have your .h file in this config folder. So that's where it's loading it from. So what we need to do, so this one doesn't upload, is take it out and see how it changes color. So if you're going to add yours in, you're basically just going to come down to the next space. I just find it easy to copy and paste. So take this whole thing, copy, come here, paste. Let's square it up so it's all nice and neat. So whatever you named your H file as, we'll say test, for example, test.h. This would be what it would be. And you can put as many custom H files in there as you like. And you can name it, like I said, whatever you like as well. So let's take this out, since we don't have one name that. And we're going to go back to our Sauron. So we know this one's in here. I like to make a custom H file for every single one I do. It just keeps it more organized for me. So I want to upload the Sauron.h file. So we have to take out the slashes here, and now it's highlighted. So we're going to verify it by checking the check mark here. So this is compiling all the information into the code. Excuse me. So it's just going to take a few seconds to compile it. If there was a problem with this .h file, you would probably get an error by now. So it was successful, and you'll know that because there's no errors down here. And then you get this pop-up box up here. So at this point you would go and connect. Now your Teensysaber has to have battery power to upload this file to it. So it would already be connected to a battery. You would stick the micro SD in the micro SD, connect it to your computer. You hear whatever sound it is pop up to show that it's connected, and then once it's connected, you're going to hit this program button right here, and you'll see a little menu pop up here, and it'll say programming. It only takes a second or two. It completes, reboots, and you're good to go. So like I said, with the sound files, just a quick overview, all these files go on the SD card. So however you set those up, however you name them, all go on to the SD card. Once that's once all those files are on there, that's pretty much all you need to do with the SD card. You have your config file saved in the Lightsaber config folder. There's our Sauron. Once it's in there, click the .ino file. It's going to come up here. Make sure we type our information in. Config /sauron.h. Make sure the brackets are out, not the brackets but the slashes. Verify, you get the pop-up, and then we program our board, and that is pretty much it. There's not anything else that you need to do program wise. You have your sound files on the SD card, information, programs on the Teensy now, and you're ready to go. So how do we go about finding some styles? So styles are easy to get off the forums, but you can also use the style editor. Now, there's two different versions. This is another one that was made up by somebody else. This is the one that's made by Frederick, and there's a link on the website. I just have it bookmarked, so you can see, for example, this is one of the styles here. So you can see it's a little bit different than what's in the config folder. And what I mean by that is when you're in the style editor, you take out the style PTR. You don't need that in the style editor. It won't function. You'll get an error up here if you have that in there. So that causes a little bit of confusion. So, for example, this is one of them. This is in here somewhere. And I copy and pasted it in here earlier. But so when you copy and paste it in, I'll just use style fire. Pick a different one here. There we go. We'll use this one here. This is just an example so you can kind of see. So if you paste it in, you hit submit, you'll get this unknown identifier. So if we take that out, hit submit, you'll see it pop up here in the structured view, and then you can power it up. Flash effects, blaster, lock up, drag, rotate it. You can change these out. There's a ton. You could probably do an entire tutorial on how to do and mess around in the style editor. I'm not going to go through all that. It's actually a little fun to just kind of figure it out your own. But you can change this code in here, and it'll change to change the colors of the blade, pulsing or whatever. But that was a quick way to just change one of the colors in there. But so that's just an example. So you have to take that out to work in the style editor. However, the problem comes is when you're not aware of that and you go to copy and paste it in from the style editor and that's not in there, and then when you run it through your .ino program to verify it, it comes up as an error. So you have to have a style PTR in there as well. Another thing you have to have is these brackets, like I said earlier, and that closes out. I'm not with I don't know C++ or anything. I'm not a coding guy, so don't butcher me if I say these wrong things as far as the terminology goes. But you just need these brackets in here to close out this argument. Maybe that's what it's called. I don't know, but so those are a couple of things that I actually ran into when I was creating my config files. So that is pretty much it. Once you got it all figured out, you're going to have a great time messing around with it. Super fun, different than any other soundboard out there. And I think I probably pretty much used every soundboard out there. And this one by far is the most fun to really mess around with. It has a lot of unique features, and I'm really loving it. I'm looking forward to getting the Profi boards when they come out. I have a couple of those on order, as well as a couple extra Teensysaber boards that I'm going to be installing. So I hope this tutorial helps you, And as always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to try to help you out with them. So until next time, take care and God bless.